Welcome to the Vera Thomas Show, where testimony, reality and truth meet you at the front door. Perspective to propose. Politics, religion, we talk about the real world we live in. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. On the Vera Thomas Show, from purpose, uplift, encourage, inspire, motivate, and let's talk about it. On the Vera Thomas Show, the Vera Thomas Show.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited about my guest today. And this is going to be a pretty raw, serious conversation. We're talking about going from survival to freedom. And we're going to be talking with my guest, Heather Wylde. Is it Wylde? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yep.
Okay, Heather Wylde. And before we even get into this conversation, let me share a little bit about Heather. But before I do that, I do want to express condolences to all of those who have lost loved ones. Prayers for the Horner family in Canton, Ohio, and prayers for the Nolan Wells family in Mississippi. May truth and justice reveal itself. And please keep these families lifted in prayer. Now, about Heather Wylde. She believes reinvention doesn't happen in a single brave moment. It happens in hundreds of messy ones. On her Becoming Wild YouTube channel, she shares candid stories about healing, identity, travel, and starting over, inspiring others to stop living by default and start creating a life that actually feels like your own. Heather, I am so honored to have you here today. And I'm going to start by asking you to share with our audience first, what was your childhood like and how did it impact you? And then we'll take it from there.
Perfect. So growing up, I thought I had a very normal childhood. I thought I had a very normal family. But I didn't have the language, but I was very depressed and I was very anxious all the time. And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, because I had a dad and mom. We had a home. Both my parents worked. We saw my grandparents on the weekends, and everybody, on the outside, especially my mom's family, they were like small town royalty. They were like just very involved with the community. Everybody knew them. And, so I went to school, I made good grades. I knew from a very young age that I didn't belong in the small town I was in. So at 11, I decided that I was going to get a scholarship to make sure that I got the heck out of that town. And, so that was how I grew up. But in the past few years, learning about narcissistic behavior patterns, narcissistic abuse, coming to understand some really dark family secrets that I just really found out about in the last few years. It was, in reality, there was nothing wrong with me. I was just living in a very abusive environment, a lot of mental and emotional abuse, and some SA abuse as well. And how it's affected me. I grew up to have a lot of depression and anxiety, and I'm a really smart human being, and I have a lot of motivation, and I have a lot of amazing work ethic when my mental health is good. And when it's not, it's very difficult. So even though I'm very bright, I have struggled. And as I was sharing before I came on, the last year, I have been living abroad in poverty, and I'm just now clawing my way out of it.
And she says she's living abroad. Let me say that she is currently in Peru. And I am honored that you're here from Peru. And, when we understand that 60% of adults who have unresolved issues, those issues stem from their childhood. And it sounds like much of what you've gone through is a direct result of some things that might have happened in your childhood. So we want to talk about how do we go from survival to freedom, and with everything that, and even now, people are going through so much because of our country, within our families. And so, how do we go from survival to freedom? And I think this is the perfect time to show what freedom what freedom looks like. Hold on, let me pull this up. This is what freedom looks like. Let me get it. Okay, this is what freedom looks like. Yes, yes, yes. That's what freedom looks like. Being able to dance when nobody's watching and to sing when nobody's listening. That's what freedom looks like. And a lot of times we're bottled up thinking that it's all this other stuff that gives us a sense of freedom, when in actuality, it's what's in us that can help dictate that freedom. Now, I'm going to be quiet and let you talk and just kind of share your thoughts about survival and freedom.
Wow. So, I mean, I think it looks very different for each individual person. And I think that one of the main messages that I want to get out to people is that there is a solution for everything. You just have to be stubborn enough to find it. When I first went to, I first went to, I went to a therapist at 14 because my father made me go. But when the therapist pointed out that he was the problem, instead of him going to therapy, he just took me out of therapy. I went into therapy myself at 19. And I say that therapy kept me from jumping off a building, but it didn't. It was personal growth and purpose-driven and healers.
Sorry.
It's okay. That actually helped me create a life that's like worth living. But I started with therapy. In my 30s, I landed in 12-step. I did that for 9 years. That was the first thing that actually really moved the needle for me, because it was actually like digging into resentments, digging into accountability, and that sort of thing. And then it got to a point where 12-step was great, but it wasn't getting me what I needed anymore. And so that's when I moved more into personal growth and coaching. And I spent a lot of money and I spent a lot of time, and it's not that I didn't put any effort into my healing, but it wasn't until last year when I just got really, really desperate. And that was the blessing of being in poverty and being in a country where I didn't know anybody. All I could do was stay home and meditate and do inner work and do breath work and all of that kind of stuff. And finally creating a daily practice of that. And, that and feeling my feelings and just letting myself feel terrible instead of continuing to run away from all those emotions. And I mean, I had done a lot to process my emotions in a lot of different modalities with a lot of different people. But this past year, I was able to process it at a deeper level. And I am feeling more joy than I ever had. That video was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh my goodness. So let me ask you, what was it? What was the trigger that made you realize that things had to change And you mentioned 12 steps. Now, usually when you think of 12 steps, you think of alcoholism and that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Yep.
Was that a part of you trying to overcome the pain that you had experienced?
100%. In my 20s, I was a daily marijuana user, and in my late 20s, I was um, using ecstasy, like vitamins, and
Mm.
I couldn't stop on my own, and I was having like daily 3-hour panic attacks. It was awful. It was really awful. And so I went to 12 step, and it helped. It helped immensely. The whole world could benefit from working those steps, whether or not they've ever touched a drop of alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then at age 11,
Mhm.
that is that the insight that you had at age 11. You want to tell us more, a little bit more about that?
Sure, and I can even take it back to when I was 8, and this very much, unfortunately, has to do with our current political environment and things going on in the U.S. right now. But I am from a place called Cumming, Georgia, and I don't know if you remember, but in the 80s, Oprah did a show there because we were an all-white town. And we were redlining people. Black families would come and look at properties, but the banks wouldn't give them loans. And so we were an entire, I think there was one Black student when I was in high school at the southern end of the county. At my high school, there was some Hispanic students came in, I think, when I was in 10th grade. But my entire childhood, I was entirely white. And when I was 8 was when the civil rights marches happened. The first, I think, did they both happen when I was 8? I think they did. At any rate, some protesters from Atlanta came up, and the KKK came out, and the National Guard came out, and the entire world, was focused on my little racist town. And I was absolutely humiliated. I was so embarrassed to be from this stupid backwards place. It was really just ugh. And then by the time I was 11, I really knew that just the values of this small town, on the surface, the values, beyond the racism, there's no way around that, right? But just it looked like a good, nice town, but just the small town, everybody talking about everybody, you're very much expected to fit into this very small box. And if you don't, then you're never fully accepted. I just knew I didn't belong there. So when I was 11, I already made good grades in school and I really like to learn. So I was like, okay, how can I make sure that I get out of this town? I hate this place. And I didn't feel safe there. I didn't feel like I could be myself. And, I was like, okay, well, I know I can get scholarships. And so at 11, I decided that I was going to be valedictorian of my high school. And, I played sports. I did everything I could to make sure that my college resume, looked good, or my high school resume looked good. And I got a scholarship. I was only salutatorian, though. I was
Well, congratulations on that.
very bummed about that. But yeah, but I got academic scholarships and was able to get out of school, or get
And so
to get
what
out of town.
so what school did you end up going to?
I went to the University of Georgia, and I was there
Okay.
for 2 years, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up because I didn't know, but I wanted to be a coach, but that didn't exist yet. And and then also, like, I got out of the house, and it was like all of the depression like got worse somehow, which if I understand correctly, it's not uncommon. It's like when you get out of the bad situation, it's like all of a sudden your nervous system is like, okay, we're safe now. We can feel this. We can start to process it, but it just hits you like a freight train. And so I had, just got really, really bad depression, anxiety. And so I left after 2 years.
And then from there, what happened? Where do you go from there?
Oh, that's where it gets scandalous and really interesting.
Tell me.
So I left school, and I was house sitting for someone in Atlanta, and I was trying to find a job, and I could have gone home. In my mind, I hadn't realized how toxic my family was at the time. My parents had divorced. My mother had gone absolutely crazy.
For real?
And so, yeah, like my dad left, and like 6 weeks later, she had an ex heroin addict / extreme alcoholic, like spending the night at the house with her and my 17-year-old sister.
Oh
And
no.
my mother has severe trauma, and she doesn't make good decisions. And I was going to say this. One of the big things that I've put together, the truth of my life and the truth of my childhood. The worst part about being abused so young, I mean, and there's awful kinds of awful things, is that it sets you up to be attracted to and attractive to abusers for the rest of your life.
And until you recognize those red flags,
Yep.
And today I had an opportunity to speak with some teenage girls. Well, actually from 10-years to 14-year-old girls. And, we talked about their relationship with their parents. And one of the things that I really try to emphasize is oftentimes parents are going through their own unresolved issues, and they don't know how to raise their children any different from how they were raised themselves. And so understanding that you understood that your parents had their own unresolved issues, did that help you to better understand why things were the way that they were with your family, or no?
So, I mean, at the time, like I shared, like I thought my family was very normal, right? But the truth was, my father was covert narcissist, and according to one of my therapists, based on some things that I shared that we may get into later, bordering on sociopath. Like, he was a very, very toxic person. So. And he would dump his problems on me. That was the ironic thing. Like, he would use me as his therapist. And then when when he made me to go to therapy because I was messed up, and I told the therapist, this is what's happening. The therapist said, he can't talk to you about those things. Right. And unfortunately it is a problem. Like, I agree that it can help children to understand that their parents may have unresolved things. At the end of the day, like, it's not the child's job to understand that. It's the parent's job to handle it,
Yeah.
And I don't say that without compassion. I know it's difficult. But yeah, I knew way too much about why my parents were messed up, honestly.
And I hear what you're saying in terms of it's not the child's responsibility to fix their parents. But in my opinion, if they understand what their parents may be going through, or understand why their parents' behaviors towards them may be the way that they are, then it's at that point that a child can let the parent know how they feel, the child, how I feel when these things happen, and to be, and not at the time that it's occurring.
Right.
But you don't want to try to do that when your parents are angry, but
no, that's not the time to communicate.
That is not the time. So when things are calm and you're able to talk at indoor voice,
right,
and be able to share, this is how I feel when these things happen. And then I also suggested that they ask their parents, so how do you feel when you're yelling at me? How do you feel when these things are happening between us? How do you feel about that? And if kids can have the confidence to express those things when their parents are in a calm state of mind, it might in fact improve the quality of the relationship that children are having with their parents.
I don't disagree with that.
And the thing is, though, when you're young, you don't think like that. You don't, it's not within you to do that. And so the sooner that we can impress on young people that they need to understand that sometimes the reason parents are the way that they are, it's not because of you, it's because of them, and because
Right.
of how they are relating, reacting, and responding to
Hmm.
situations, and teaching kids that we don't have control. We don't have control over who our parents are. We don't have control over how they relate, react, and respond. But even as a child, we can learn how to relate, react, and respond
Hmm.
ourselves, you know?
True. And I mean, being able to have compassion and understanding for what other people are going through. Um, I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think there's a famous quote that talks about like 90% of people's reaction to us has nothing to do with us.
Has nothing to do with
It's
us.
it's the day they're having, it's their history, it's all kinds of things, and it maybe 10% has to do with us. And
Yes.
yeah, understanding that can be very helpful. As when I had the dark secret family revelations, over the past 6 years, I definitely started to see my mother in a kinder light and understand really what she had gone through as a child and as an adult. And it did change things toward my mother, but I was an adult before I had the context for that.
And that's good that you finally had the context, though,
Yeah.
because then I gather is your mom still around?
I'm actually not sure. I actually had to cut her off, ultimately.
Okay.
It was too toxic. Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's another thing that we need to understand. Sometimes for our own sanity, sometimes for our own peace of mind, sometimes for our own wherewithal, we may have to cut people,
Mhm.
and it may be family. But if it's going to help you be a better version of yourself to do
Mhm.
that, then it may be something that has to be done.
Yep, it's never easy though. I wish her well. I hope that she's well. I'm sad that I can't have, a relationship with my family, but it is just not in the cards.
Well, I understand, and I'm sorry that that's the case for you.
Thank
And
you.
but it sounds like you've also forgiven, even though you may not have a relationship with her, you've been able to forgive her
Oh yeah.
and forgive yourself as well.
Hmm. Hard. Yeah. 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 Haven't quite gotten to forgiveness of my dad yet, but I've forgiven my mom. Yeah.
I understand. I understand. And narcissism is, I mean, it is widespread in this country. And you talked about covert narcissism, and there are many levels of narcissism. Right
Hmm.
now, in the White House, we have a malignant narcissist in our White House.
Agreed. And I would argue sociopath. He is a
Oh,
nut.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. But do you want to explain to our audience the difference between a covert narcissist and a malignant narcissist, or
I can give you my understanding of it. So a grandiose narcissist is what the kind of classic narcissist is. That's the person that's just super confident. They're usually very successful, but they can be kind of like a blowhard, and they just kind of brag a lot, and everything's the best. And the dark
and it's
side
all
is
about them.
it's all about them. They're very selfish, and they tend to have a very sunny and perfect public persona, and then be very abusive and horrible in private. A covert narcissist is someone that they everything is all about them, but they're very pitiful. Instead of "I'm the best," it's kind of like,
Feel
"Oh, the
sorry
world is
for me.
terrible." Yes, they control
Poor
people
me.
through, yeah, through feeling sorry for them. And they seem very pitiful, but they are master manipulators, and can really just make you feel horrible. um, there is a type that I forget what the name of this one is, but it's kind of like the community person, the person who volunteers for everything. And, the whole community thinks they're great because they're always volunteering. They're they're the head of the PTA and they do the bake sale and the blah, 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 blah. But they often end up being very neglectful and abusive of their family. So again, they have this public persona of very service and very selfless, but behind the scenes, they're very different. And then you have the malignant narcissist, which is, they have the antisocial behavior, like they're generally criminals, and are just very, very cutthroat, just very, very nasty people. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, and like I said, we have a malignant one in the White House right now, and I.
That is a huge reason why I left the US. God made me, number one. But I think that part of the reason God made me was because I had a horrible feeling that that man was going to get elected, and he did. And yeah.
And so you left.
I did.
I can't tell you how many people would like to do the same.
I'm telling you.
I mean, it's terrible.
It is just, I knew it was going to be bad. I had no idea how bad it was going to be. I'm just floored daily by like, what? Really? Just, yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
It is. So we can move on.
But the interesting thing is that moving away from the US, like literally, I was living back in my small town again, because I had been taking care of my father, and I took care of him for 4 years until he finally died. Praise God. And I knew he was toxic. And the more I set boundaries with him, and this is one of the problems with setting boundaries with toxic people, they get crazier when their BS stops working on you. They can sometimes, a lot of the times, get crazier. And I definitely, had that happen with him. But he passed. I was so thrown by, I always suspected that he was a child predator. As I was cleaning out the house after he died, I found photographic proof, and it just completely spun me. It completely reset my brain. And on the one hand, it was a relief and it was freeing because it was like, oh, wow, I was right. I'm not crazy. But on the other hand, it was like, oh my God, like I kind of knew this and I didn't do something. And this person in these pictures got hurt because I didn't do anything. Right. So, so it really, 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 really spun me. So instead of leaving immediately after he died, I stayed for a couple more years. And finally, one day, I'm doing all this inner work on myself. And I realized, like, Heather, everywhere you go in this town reminds you of your miserable childhood, reminds you of, this, that, and the other thing. And like I mentioned, there's horrible family memories, but there's also, most of the people that I was friends and most of the people that I dated, not all, but a lot of them had a lot of narcissistic abusive qualities. And, because that was normal to me. And so everywhere I went in this town, I'm reminded of that. Plus there were Trump signs everywhere. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll move. You'll like this. So I was going to move up to Asheville, North Carolina. And I went up there, and the plan was to go for a month, find an apartment. About 2 weeks in, all of a sudden my brain says, or at the time I was like, I had this idea. It's like, you should go to Mexico. And I was like, that's insane. I've never been to Mexico. I've barely been outside the country. I don't speak Spanish. I don't know anybody there. That's insane. And it would not stop. And finally, I realized it was God. It was like an intuitive nudge is not the right word. It was like a foot on the back of my neck that was like, you're going to go to Mexico. And finally, I was like, I will go for 2 weeks just to stop this, but this is crazy. And so I went down there, and after 4 days, I was like, no, I'm going to stay. And I came back to Georgia. I sold my car, went back to Mexico. 2 months later, a hurricane hit Asheville, North Carolina. A hurricane that came up from the Gulf, didn't come in 6 hours from the coast, from the Atlantic, came all the way up through Georgia and into Tennessee. And I was like, okay, well, that's why I wasn't supposed to be in Asheville. Thank you.
Obedience is better than sacrifice, let me tell you.
I have never had such a thing of like, no, you're going to move. You're going to do this. I've had other times where God spoke to me, never this strongly. But I couldn't figure out like why I had to go to Mexico. But what I figured out in the last couple of years, because I was in Mexico for a year and I've been in Peru for a year, is that it's been very healing because the architecture is completely different. The landscape is completely different. So every time, and I'm hearing a different language. I'm not hearing, the same kind of music that I heard in the US, although I do hear a lot of American music here, but it's been healing because I'm not being triggered every 2 minutes because everything is different, right? So that has been one of the really healing things for me about living abroad.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What amazes me is how you were able to care for your father after the way he treated you. That is amazing and commendable.
Thank you. And here's the other part of the story. So he got sick in late 2017 and nearly died. And he did the hoovering thing that narcissists will do when they can tell that they're losing you, or if they really, really need you for something.
Mhm.
And oh, Heather, I just want you to know that I just love you and I've always admired you and blah, blah, blah. And my mind was like, this is weird. But then I was like, well, don't be a jerk. Your dad's expressing love. And so I kind of let him hoover me back in. And I went to stay with him, and he had myasthenia gravis, which is a very serious autoimmune disorder. He kept going in and out of the hospital. So he really didn't need to be by himself. And I had family members who didn't want to deal with him. So they were really pressuring me to take care of him. And then I got breast cancer. So I didn't have anywhere else to go. Fortunately, I'd been working a job where I had really good health insurance. Thank God. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. And the type of cancer that I had, it started out as stage 0, which I had never even heard of. And I thought they were lying to me. And 3 or 4 months later, I actually had the mastectomy, and it turned out that I had stage 3 cancer. So
Wow.
it went from, you have stage 0 cancer, you might just need surgery. You might not have to have, chemo or radiation, to you have to have a year of chemo and intense radiation. So I was really, really sick for a year, and my dad was going in and out of the hospital. I had 6 hard chemo treatments, and then I had 7.5 months of what I call chemo light. So like my hair started growing back, and I didn't feel like I wanted to die so much, but I still didn't feel good. The last day of my hard chemo treatments, my father was back in the hospital for something.
Was anyone there for you while you were going through your treatments and chemo and stuff?
I had my friends were all in Atlanta, which is an hour away, but that's with good traffic. But
I lived in Atlanta, so I know.
it's so much worse now, if you can even imagine.
Oh.
But I was away from my friend group. My dad did have a community around him, and he had one sister who lived in the area, but she's very toxic. And so he didn't really want her to be around, and she didn't really want to be around. My mother, because bless her heart, she has so much trauma. She was calling me that same day, the day of my last chemo. She called me and she's like, I locked myself out of my truck. Can you come get me? And I'm like, no, Mom, I can't. Like, I'm really sick, So it was a very, very lonely time. And the first, and I'm grateful that I had a roof over my head. I had good insurance. My dad was taking care of me financially. It could have been a lot worse. But the cost of that was, my dad was, he was Dr. Jekyll 95% of the time. But when he was Mr. Hyde, he would come in like a sniper and just cut you to the bone with something crazy he would say, and then go right back to being normal.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of gaslit yourself. You're like, wait,
what happened?
Yeah, it's like he's acting, and then of course, Dad, that really hurt my feelings. Oh, I'm so sorry. Really? I didn't know that could hurt your feelings. And then I would feel crazy, right? So so we had that the first couple of years. And then after that, I was doing more work on myself. And one day, like all my life, he would always talk to me about adult relations. And I grew up thinking that this was normal because he had all in starting at 10 years old, he would talk to me about adult relations. And at 42, no, I guess I was 43. One day it occurred to me, hey, I don't have to listen to this. And so I, and it was interesting because I set some boundaries with him. And in the beginning, it was a little rough, but then he would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that bothered you. And he would change his behavior. But when it came to talking about adult relations, he was very understanding at first, right? But then about 3 months later, he did it again. But this time he changed it up. Instead of talking about him and adult relations, he just talked about in general adult relations. And I said, hey, Dad, remember we had to talk about this. This makes me uncomfortable. Can you not talk about? Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you meant only you don't want me to talk about me doing it. No, Dad, I really meant about everything.
Period.
Right? Oh, I'm so sorry. Right? And then the emotional temperature of the house would plummet. And about 5 hours later, we would have a blowout where we had to talk about how he has to walk on eggshells around me. And I'm so mean to him. And I'm so, blah, 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 blah.
And you're sick at the same time.
And I'm sick at this time, I think that was, yeah, I had just finished chemo treatments completely for a year. And so I was starting to get back to myself. And then 3 months later, he wants to talk about the donkeys having relations across the street. Hey, Dad, remember, we had a conversation, this really makes me feel uncomfortable. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think that the donkeys would bother you. And then the same thing. And he was telling his sisters that he was afraid of me. And, I thought I was going to go to jail for elder abuse, but we were during the pandemic. So I had nowhere for me to go. So it really, like, me taking care of him. And I did to the best of my ability. And I'm sure he lived longer because of the care that I helped him get. But it was really, I had nowhere else to go. Like it was.
Heather, first of all, thank God that you survived cancer.
Thank you.
Second of all, I know because I took care of both of my sisters that were diagnosed with cancer at the same time.
Woo.
One was in Ohio and the other was in Kentucky. And I was going back and forth between the two. The Lord moved me to Kentucky to be closer to my baby sister, who happened to be in a toxic environment. So I understand when you're sick like that and in such a toxic environment, it cannot help you.
No.
Oh my God. So I'm sorry that you had to endure the toxicity while trying to heal your body. I understand. And you're stronger than you may think, having gone through that. And so I just say, God bless you. And thank God that you survived that. And thank God you're now in an environment of peace,
Yes. Just, yes.
And there's nothing like peace. There is nothing like peace.
Yeah. And over the years, I had I had removed toxic people from my life. Every time I hit a new level of healing and looked around and was just like, I can't stand these people anymore. I can't do it anymore. But my dad, because of my therapist described it as Stockholm syndrome. She said that the trauma bond between a narcissist and the narcissistic abuser or no, I'm sorry, the abused person and the narcissistic abuser is very much like Stockholm syndrome, because again, I'm like, I'm so intelligent. Why am I putting up with this? And my therapist was like, it's a trauma bond. You had Stockholm syndrome. That's why you couldn't leave him, even though you knew that this, situation was bad. And kind of going back to one of the things that's really helped me in the past year is, because I was just beat up on myself a lot. My family had beat up on me a lot because I was very bright, went to school on scholarships. So there's like, I don't understand why you can't get your stuff together. Well, complex PTSD severely dysregulates your nervous system. It completely undermines your faith in yourself. And if you've, lived with someone who gaslit you, like my father did, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust your own perceptions. It's very hard to make consistent, good decisions. And, one of the things I realize now, looking back on this situation, back in I think it was like 2019 when things started to go sour with my dad, and they just progressively got worse until he died in 2022. I had other options, but I was so I had Stockholm syndrome. And as much as I knew he was abusing me, I couldn't leave him because he was sick and he needed me. And I knew that was sick. I knew that was not healthy thinking, but I couldn't break out of it. And, but I had other options, but I couldn't see them. And then I would beat myself up for that. But it's like, if you've suffered a lot of trauma, your thinking is not right. And that is not there's nothing wrong with you, but it takes a long time to heal, and it's worth doing, and it's possible to do it.
And it's a daily job. It's not, it's something you have to work on daily. For our listening audience that may not understand the Stockholm syndrome, can you explain that so that people can understand it?
I can try. So Stockholm syndrome is like when kidnap victims suddenly become attached to their kidnappers and will advocate for them, and will like start to help their kidnappers. And it's a fawn response, so as humans, we have like the freeze response when we're in trauma, where we just shut down, and we have fawn, where we will try to make our abusers like us in hopes that maybe they won't hurt us as badly. And so Stockholm syndrome is essentially that. And so, like with my father, like I knew he was awful, but I felt disloyal. Like if I left him, I felt like I would be a bad person. People would think I was a bad daughter if I left him.
So because our title is From Survival to Freedom.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what were some of the things that you had to do to move from survival to freedom. And let me also say, freedom, when we talk about freedom, we're not necessarily talking about money and wealth and all of that kind of stuff. Freedom, having that sense of freedom where you are not holding on to a lot of baggage, and you're not holding on to a lot of guilt. You're not holding on to a lot of stuff that happened in the past. When you can let go of all those things, you can have freedom. Even in the midst of crap that's going on, there can still be that sense of freedom. So if you can give us some tools, some ideas, some things that you did to get yourself free.
Yeah.
One was moving, leaving this country.
The country. Yeah. That was very God inspired. That was not my idea. I was terrified of living outside of the US. Never saw myself doing it. But it's been really great for me. So therapy, and finding the right therapist and the right modality, because not all modalities work for all people. And even if you find a therapist that's the right modality, they might not have the right personality. And so going to therapy and being willing to be like, you know what, you're not the right therapist for me, next. So that has been really important. When I recognized that I couldn't stop doing drugs on my own and going to get help in 12-step, that was very, very important. And also the day that came that I realized that 12-step was no longer helping me and that I needed to move to something else, right? For some people, it's a solution for life. I'm not knocking that. For me, it was not the solution for life. And so, getting into the coaching community, going to, investing in weekend seminars and, going, trying everything. I mean, you have to keep your sense about you. And, Vera put my book up, which is about like
Yes.
how to choose the right business coach, but you can really use the 7 steps to for any kind of coaching, right? And I do think coaching is very powerful, but you want to be careful. You don't want to just give your money to anybody. My book is very, very step by step, 7 steps of how to find the right coach for you.
Yes.
But getting into that, trying EFT, EMDR. EFT is like the tapping.
Yes.
EMDR is the somatic, like doing somatic stuff. And sometimes
Explain somatics. Explain that.
yeah. So you can journal, you can talk about stuff and get it out. And that can be really helpful. I think that, processing things on a mental level is important. But if you don't also process it out of your body, there's a great book called The Body Keeps Score. And what they found is that trauma lives in the body. And so
Yes.
I processed a lot in therapy and in 12-step, a lot of middle stuff. And that was where I took accountability for a lot of things, which is, it's sounds awful, but it's actually kind of freeing when you take accountability for things.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, you think it's going to be very confining, but it's actually very freeing.
It's
So
freeing.
I had done that and it was very helpful. And I processed a lot of anger and grief and shame and all kinds of stuff doing that. But I still had a lot of like, the anger was still in my body. And so I've done a lot of punching pillows. I've done a lot of a kid's plastic bat, like those empty plastic bats that you get. You can beat the crap out of your sofa. It sounds like you're killing something. It will wear your butt out, but you will feel so much better. So I've done a lot of like beating things. Let's see, this year, I did a lot of just literally laying in bed and just letting myself feel awful and realizing how much energy I was expending to always keep that stuff pushed down instead of, because I didn't know how to feel it. It wasn't safe to feel it. I don't know. I've tried just about everything. Keep your wits about you. Don't drink all the, I say, don't drink all the Kool-Aid from anybody. Like you have to decide how much Kool-Aid you're going to drink from any one mentor or guru or whatever. But you have to feel the feelings and you have to get the feelings out. And if you don't, then they just continue to control
and they
you.
make you sick.
And they make you sick. I do think that a lot of my first coach was not a business coach, a career coach. And she told me, she was like, you can't work for corporate America. And I was like, well, I mean, I could if I had to. And she was like, no, it will eat your soul. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had been working for a corporate job for exactly a year. And yeah, the way that it ate my soul is that it took my left boob.
And you know what? People don't understand. They don't understand the correlation between our environmental experiences and our health. People don't understand how we relate, react, and respond in situations can impact on our health. Mm-hmm. And so having that peace of mind in the midst of whatever, there's nothing like it. And you can have it. And go ahead.
Yeah, you can have it, but it can be a long road. It's worth it. Just if I had listened to my therapist, and I'm not knocking therapists, I'm not knocking psychiatrists, all of them all these things have played a role in my journey to get me where I am now. But if I had just listened to them, I would still be on antidepressants and anxiety meds and sitting on a therapist.
And you're not anymore?
Mm-mm. No.
Awesome.
And I mean, and I was off of them for a long time, and then I went back on them for about a year. And, this past year, honestly, I couldn't find my antidepressant here in Peru, at least not in the city that I'm at. So I was like, okay, I have to come up with another solution because I'm not going back to the US anytime soon. And if every country I go to, I've got to try a new antidepressant, I'm like, no, I'm over this. So I never knocked that. They're a valid part of people's journey. But for me, I just didn't want to be on
So what did
medication.
you do instead? We're talking from survival to freedom. So what did you
Violent
do?
freedom.
And
I
and it's also freedom from even your medications. So
Yeah.
what did you do?
I had a wonderful mindset and quantum identity coach last year that worked with me for free. She just donated her time. And, she was just like, you got to feel these feelings, you need to get up, you need to meditate every day. You need to be, having the movement. And it's all like, we want the answer to be so complicated, but really, she was like, no, she was like, you need to eat good food. You need to drink enough water. You need to, be getting rest. You need to meditate, every single day. You need to do breath work. And so I did all that. And it was interesting. I was teaching English at one point at a local school here. And one of my students was this beautiful 14-year-old Peruvian girl. And she's absolutely gorgeous. She's going to be a just man killer when she gets older, right? But she's 14 and she's got braces and she's got the body of a 14-year-old boy, right? She's not a woman. And yet I saw one of my coworkers grooming her. I saw him very clearly flirting with her. He's,
Oh
29
my
years old.
God.
And because of my background, because I had been gaslit, because my list of essay is as long as my arm. Like it's just ridiculous. And it put me into like a PTSD response. It triggered the hell out of me. And I was just like, I froze for a second. And then I was like, nope. After finding the evidence of my father's crimes and realizing that if I had trusted myself and maybe told somebody, maybe this person in the pictures I found wouldn't have been hurt. I thought of that. And so I went to the manager of the school and I said, listen, I don't know if you're going to believe me or not, but this is what I observed. And, this is inappropriate. And she didn't believe me. She did make sure that girl had classes with me for the next couple of months. I don't know what happened after I left the school, but in that moment, I realized I was like, wow, you've gone from survivor to advocate. You've gone from a survivor to somebody who's going to advocate and try to help other people. And that was very healing, but it was also very scary. That put me into like a PTSD, just triggered. Like, I just didn't feel like I was quite in reality for about 10 days. It really, really scared me. The experience and then speaking up really just scared me. But I was also so proud of myself and I felt so much stronger.
Yes. Now, the person that was in the pictures that you found from your father, did you ever have opportunity to engage or communicate with them after you found those pictures?
That's something I can't really talk about, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it was very frustrating because he was dead and there was nothing that could be done. And part of my dark night of the soul this past year was dealing with the guilt and the shame of like, because I suspected that he was abusing this person. But at the time I was in my 20s. It was my last year of drug addiction. So I was a mess. And I knew that my family wouldn't believe me if I said anything. And I was afraid that by saying something, I would actually make the situation worse.
Okay.
And all of that in hindsight is valid. But I really beat myself up once I found the proof. And I was just like, I feel like a horrible person that I didn't protect this person. And I had to really deal with like the guilt and the shame around that. And it was ugly. Oh my God, it was
But you
ugly.
got over it, right?
I did. I did. Yeah. But it was a lot of, like, I literally was dealing with wanting to unalive myself every day for about 2 months.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was a severe depression, and all I could do was just go through it and just have the faith that I was going to get through it.
And you're not on any medications for depression or anything right now. And
No.
how do you feel right now?
Now I feel good. So it was about this time last year that I started going into the dark depression. The worst of it started to lift probably by October, like mid-October. But I kept telling people, I'm like, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can, like, tell that I've moved closer to the light, but I'm still in the tunnel. In January, I was telling people that, I'm like, I'm at the lit end of the tunnel, but I'm still in the tunnel. And it just took months for, it was like, I processed it, but it was like, it was just so much that my brain, there was a lag. So even though I knew I was doing better, I was still had a lot of brain fog. I couldn't think clearly. I was working at that English school where I was severely underpaid and just miserable. And then the thing happened. It it was just a mess. But this past month, I landed a job. I love my business. I love working for myself. I love coaching. I love teaching. I love helping heart-centered entrepreneurs learn to sell. But I hate marketing. I hate it. And when my mental health isn't good, which has been most of the time, the entire time I've been trying to run my business, it's just been something that I could not do consistently enough to have consistent clients and be able to support myself. And so I am working for a company. I'm selling a functional medicine offer that I'm really excited about. And I get my first paycheck in the next couple of days. And yeah, it's there's on my Facebook page, I'm gonna put up pictures of the apartment I'm living in now. I have no refrigerator. I have no stove. I have aluminum foil over my windows. I call it poverty chic.
But you know what? But even with that, you still have freedom, right?
I still have freedom and I have that joy. And, I always thought, it's like, well, if I don't have money, and I've never been this broke in my life, and certainly never been this broke for this long in my life, it has been terrifying, but it's what I needed to actually do the work and focus on myself. And so it was a blessing, but God, please don't bless me. So,
And
please.
you know what? I can so relate to your story, because as an entrepreneur, as you're trying to build your clientele and what have you, it doesn't happen and it's very inconsistent. So I can so relate to the poverty piece. Speaking of which, please subscribe to my channel so that I can monetize. Please subscribe, like, and support the Vera Thomas Show. And if you can, please donate to the Vera Thomas Show, because the Lord moved me back to Ohio. I did not want to be here. And it was like, why are you moving me back? But I'm here, and I now can see why I'm here. But I'm struggling. We're all struggling, and I just recently received a small contract working with an organization that I'll be starting next week. And so sometimes we have to look at all options and explore all possibilities in terms of generating income. And with that, let me suggest, if any of you out here can support the Vera Thomas Show, it is greatly appreciated. And you can do so through Cash App, $ Instill Great, or Venmo at VT1117. Please help support me, because it costs to run this show.
Yes.
It's not free to me. So
no.
if you can support me, audience, please please, by all means, do so. I love what I'm doing because we are making a difference in people's lives. And we've got I can't believe we got less than a minute left. And so I am going to give you the floor and let you have the last words on From Survival to Freedom. And I just feel led to play and then let me pull up your book right quick. This is her book, and you can get it on Amazon. Let me pull that up. You can purchase her book on Amazon. So go to Amazon, Entrepreneur Wishes. Give me the full name of your book.
It's too long. It's what every entrepreneur wishes they'd known before hiring a business coach. But if you don't want to buy this on Amazon, just send me an email and I will sell you a PDF because I hate Amazon.
Oh, okay. Well, here's her email. It's WYLDE coach@gmail.com.
Yes,
her
ma'am.
website is Heather, WYLDE.com. Heather,
Yep.
WYLDE.com. Okay. Well, listen, this has been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
And I'm just so happy that you have gone through all the things that you've gone through. You've gone through them. You're past them now. And
Yes.
you are all the more better, a better version of yourself as a result of what you've gone through. And we have ran out of time, but I'm going to take the time for you to have the last word.
Just whatever you've been through, there is an answer, there is relief, there is healing, but you have to want it. And don't let someone say that you have to settle for a level of healing that is not what you want. Like I said, if I had just listened to people, I would just still be taking antidepressants and sitting on a therapist's couch every week. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I wanted ultimately for myself. And but also it's okay to take breaks. It's good to take breaks. Like healing can be really hard work, and sometimes we need to just we need to take a break, right? And that's okay too. But whatever you're going through, and I mean, I'll even say this, for some of the medical stuff that I've been through, there's answers out there. You just have to stay hungry and stubborn for those answers.
Amen.
That's the best thing I can tell you.
Well, I have put your email in the chat along with your website. And so people can go to that, check the comments, and get in touch and be in touch with Heather. And again, Heather, I thank you so much for being here. God bless you. And with that, if you would hold on, I'm going to pull you down. Don't leave. And
Okay.
I'll be back with you. Thank you, audience, for being here and listening to this show. And again, please support the Vera Thomas Show. You can do so by subscribing, liking, and sharing. You can also donate by going to Cash App, $Instill Great, or Venmo at VT1117. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that, God bless you, and we will see you on Thursday with another exciting guest.
Let's talk about it on the Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show.